Hello, my name's Sean Brown from WiSen Innovation, and in this WiSen Quick Guide video series, I'm going to show you how to remove multiple false steps from a data set. So what might happen with nodes over time is they may have a false step due to maybe a knock on site. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to review a tilt meter for which I know the x-axis has had a false knock. So we go into the data set of interest, and this being the x-axis, being the primary axis, and we can see here that in the data set we have had 3 instantaneous knocks, and we'd like to remove these 3 independent steps so that the data reverts back to the resultant value where my mouse is. Now to do that, we would go to Setup and Node Offset. We go down to the node of interest. We define this by the serial number, or perhaps you have a reference ID. And it's typical with a tilt meter that if the x-axis is affected, then so too will the y at exactly the same epoch time. So you have the ability now for attribute selection to define multiple parameters. So I'm going to select the x and the y, and we go to add offset. And again, we're looking at the data set. Now by default, this displays the last 24 hours of data, and if your offset, your false step is in the past, is beyond this time period, you have the ability to redefine your time period here and plot it. So you're focusing in on the data that you wish to correct. Now I'm just going to zoom in to make my life a little bit easier. And you can see the 3 steps. Now the process I'm going to adopt is I'm going to work from the oldest step to the most current, and we're going to do this as 3 workflow steps. So the first process will be to define the data in the first step, and we do this by right clicking, going to add, and we add this as a start point. We now want to define an endpoint. We repeat the process, hover the mouse over the last point, we right click, we go to add, and we define this as an endpoint. Now we've selected the data, as you see here. We right click on the data set. It doesn't matter where your mouse is located. And now we have other selectable options. So we're looking at step 2, and we're going to go to advanced offset. And what we're doing here is we're calculating the relative offset step. So again, I'm going to zoom in and focus on the data set. Like so. And on the very first data point, we're going to right click, and this time we're going to define this as a point of data selected. Now this is the current resultant value, what you see in box A. So watch what happens when I select the point. Then box A is defined as that value. Now we're looking to define the target resultant value. So where are you trying to shift the data to? And this would be the point I'm determining here. And again, if I right click, you see that typically I would go and use the point of data selected. Note here you have a multitude of options. So you can customize, you can physically type in a value yourself, or perhaps you'd like to work out an average from the past or a median or a maximum. But the most common would be a point on the data set. Once we've selected that, we then have box C populated as the offset. We press confirm. And if we want to ensure what we've just undertaken is correct, we have a preview button here. And what we're looking at is where my mouse is with the dark blue was the data before the offset, and if we reference above, we now have purple data for that small segment, that initial step where the data is going to be shifted to. So that is correct. Now remembering here that I'm undertaking this for the x-axis, as you can see where my mouse is. If you were defining this for the y as well, then the ability to do this is through this little button here, apply to other nodes. And what we see pop up, if you define other serial numbers, would be a list of those here as well. But what we're trying to do is apply that same offset functionality into the y-axis for the same serial number. And we tick that box there when we press confirm. So that step, and press confirm again, will then be removed from both x and y, and we've completed the process for that first step. We'd go to node offset update, and we press confirm. And we have a little offsetting progress button you see here. Now the quantity, or the amount of time should I say, that takes will depend on how much data is being offset. We only have a few points, so this should take a matter of seconds, and as you can see, it's now complete. So if we go back into that same node, and again we're going to do x and y, we're now looking to undertake step number 2. We press add offset, and we're presented with the same data set, but this time, as you can see on the screen, we only have 2 remaining steps. So again, I'm going to zoom in, and we're going to undertake step number 2 in the past. Again, right click on the initial point, we go to add, and we go to start point. We pick the last point in that step, we right click, we go to add, and we go to end point. That data is now selected. We right click on the data itself, we have additional options, we go to advanced offset. Again, I'm just going to zoom in to make the selection process a little bit easier. And what we're looking to do is shift the red selected data from this defined point as populated in box A to this defined point as populated in box B, and that relative offset is calculated as we see in box C, and we press confirm. Again, if you wish to preview, you can do this now, and as we see on the screen, the dark blue data down the bottom, step 2, is now aligned to the resultant value we're looking to set, and we press OK. Now remember again, this has now been applied to the X. If you want to apply it to the Y, we press the little apply to other nodes button. We tick the node and we press confirm. So we've completed the process for step number 2. We go to the node offset update and we press confirm. And again, a little offsetting process button will update. It should be a matter of seconds because the data set is fairly small. And we'll just repeat the process for the most current step. So again, select the node, X, Y, and the add offset. We have that last remaining step. We zoom in. We select the first point. We right click, add, start point. Now, a very important step coming up now. Obviously, we're defining the end point, but remembering that this is the most current value going forward, and we need to ensure that that offset step is removed from any data, newly attained data going forward. So instead of doing add endpoint, we're looking to do endpoint and apply that offset going forward. So it's important now that you apply this step, otherwise the next data set you have will revert back to the value we have in this false step. So it would obviously remove that step that's occurred in the past, but the next data set would be back to the false step value. So we're looking to basically correct it going forward as well. So this is what this little button does. Now we do that, and then we repeat the same steps we know from previous. We right click, we go to advance, again zoom in to make the selection a little bit easier. Right click on the point of selected data. We'll revert it back to this point of data selected. We have the target, we have the resultant, and we have the relative offset calculated, and we press confirm. Now note that the epoch here, 1642, and we're reading every minute on this node. So in a minute, when we come to review the data, we will ensure that the most current epoch is sitting at the value we see here on my screen at the moment, 6.32. But let's finish this step process first. Again, apply to other nodes, apply it to the Y, press confirm, and confirm again. Now we proceed to the node offset update, confirm you want to proceed, and the little offset process will now be undertaken. Now remember, anything you're doing here, if you make a mistake, you have the ability in that same offset function to reset the data to raw so that you can reapply the offset process again. Now I'm pretty confident I've corrected that data set. I'm just going to go now to review this. So if we go to data, show table, we review the node that had the knock. We will review the x-axis. Now notice what I said earlier. The current epoch time now at the moment is 4:47. and you can see here that the value is as required. I'm just going to go back and just show a 24-hour period, just so we're clear that the steps have gone. And we press plot. And essentially we're looking at the magnitude of the x axis, or the y axis, sorry. You can see here that the steps have been removed and we're just looking at a clean data set. So this concludes the process for the multiple false step removal from a data set.